And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Joining us now from the Media Research Center, our great friend Dan Gaynor. And I don't know if this is true. Perhaps Dan is best friends with Michael Wolff. Good morning, Dan.
I think not. I try to keep my my whack job friends to a minimum.
Boy, crazy times we're living in. I know that's something that we talk about all the time, but let's examine this at KIDO Talk Radio. Why would anybody let the Wolff into the White House?
There's a lot of naivete about media, about so-called journalists, because I think someone who crafts a narrative and doesn't focus on facts qualifies as a so-called journalist. There's actually a real good debate between Jake Tapper and Paul Farhi about Wolff on Twitter over the weekend, and they're both criticizing the guy and saying, "Oh, I don't believe this, I don't believe that." Well, then don't believe the darn book. I certainly don't. I'm not going to waste my time, and certainly not my money or my boss's money if I bought it for work, to read something that I don't know anybody who believes all of it. Well, if you don't believe all of it, one of the standards of belief is that you can't believe any of it. If you think somebody's lying to you, one of the statements he makes, and this was a point Jake Tapper made, the statement he says is 100% of Trump's inner circle think he's not qualified, not able to do the job, that et cetera. And so Tapper asked Farhi about that. Do you think that number is accurate? And Farhi said no. Well, then how can you believe one other detail? Now, all it is like they say a docudrama. Oh, we're going to take what is that? I think the movie's Unstoppable. The movie about the train, where the train is going like 80 miles or 100 miles an hour through Pennsylvania. It's unstoppable, and you see at the end of the movie, somewhere beginning of the end of the movie, based on real events. Based, not real. That in reality, I think the train was going like 10 miles an hour, and somebody got the idea, oh, this could happen. It doesn't mean it's real. It's just based on real events.
Or like the TV show or movie Fargo.
That's certainly an interesting comparison. Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah. I love that movie. That's a great movie. I haven't seen the TV show, but it's a hilarious movie. Very dark humor.
You'll love the first season of the TV show. Dan Gaynor joining us, Media Research Center. Kevin Miller here at KIDO Talk Radio. So Dan, let's go into this. Obviously, Michael Wolff doing the rounds with the usual suspects. Our friend Morning Mika and her sidekick Joe talking about the 25th Amendment and the cabinet must do the right thing, and Scarborough looking for a patriotic Republican to take down the president. Amazing.
Well, I mean, at some point in time, you have to say that what they're trying to organize is a coup. When you bring in a psychiatrist on the Capitol Hill to meet with people who is advocating for forcibly kidnapping the president and testing him, that's what the Democrats did. That comes from Vox. That doesn't come from me. That was the headline on Vox Media's story about this nutty person. I certainly would like to see her arrested. But when you start advocating for stuff like this, as the left is doing, you stop being a commentator when you're advocating for criminally kidnapping the president and taking over. That's a coup. That's what they wanted. That's what they're trying to do. It's very scary. Fortunately, it has no chance. I'm not particularly worried that some cabal of a few Democratic congressmen are going to be able to pull together the military heft to take over our government. This is not 7 days in May. This is, more like 15 minutes in January.
Usually a dull time of year, but not so. So again,
the concept of dull time of year is out the window, by the way. As long as President Trump is in office, and maybe thereafter, the velocity of insane media has gone off the charts. I mean, did you watch? I didn't watch the Golden Globes. No sane person did unless we're paying them. But NBC, there was, of course, Oprah got an award last night. NBC tweets out with their official NBC account, nothing but respect for our capital our future president, with a gif of Oprah smiling.
Yeah.
Our future president. That's what they're. And now remember, the media have been talking about Oprah as president for close to 2 decades.
Right.
People magazine did a poll about the most popular celebrity people back in the 90s. Back in 2003, Oprah actually had to address it, said she would never get involved in politics, even though she's been involved in politics. She does a lot by donations. She's a big lib. I really respect Oprah. I don't want to see her as president, but I really respect her.
Well, back to the point, they've lost their mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point. They have there's not a major media outlet, not ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, that has not gone completely, utterly insane. You look at the stuff. The Washington Post. It's not just about Trump, but I mean, literally, they had somebody saying, "Oh, there's going to be a Trump recession" yesterday in the paper. Their front page is covered with anti-Trump stuff. It's only been a few years ago when there used to be other stories on a front page. Now it's all politics. It's all the media want to talk about, and we are lost in this Twitter-induced game of Trivial Pursuit, where, oh my God, Trump used this word, and we're suddenly going to obsess about it for 2 days. Meanwhile, we fighting, trying to fend off the nuclear aims of North Korea because they're threatening to nuke us pretty much all the time. We're dealing with policy issues, major national concerns, and the media want to talk about gibberish.
Dan Gaynor joining us, reviewing the gibberish from the media with Kevin Miller here at KIDO Talk Radio. So, Dan, let's. I guess we should kind of move on, if you will. But it goes back to the two Americas, and I don't know if you caught Jake Tapper yesterday. It was all afire on Twitter with Stephen Miller, where Stephen Miller was trying to get his points out. Tapper said, "Enough, you're done." And whether you agree with Stephen Miller or not, his points resonate. The media is not talking about the jobs created. The media is not talking about people having confidence, the most consumer confidence during the Christmas time that we've had in years. It's just the narrative continues to go on and on and on. Your thoughts?
Well, it's funny. I'm really impressed that you keyed on that, because I was watching Twitter, and I have not seen the Miller thing. I follow him on Twitter, but I have not seen it. And the reaction is so off the charts different depending on your worldview. If you hate Trump, you think Miller did an awful job. And if you like Trump, you think he did a wonderful job. And there's no in between. I mean, it is genuinely, it's not just two Americas, it is two worldviews that are so divergent now that, the fact that Miller was willing to fight with Tapper is reviled on the left and celebrated on the right. How do you find common ground when the two sides really don't agree on absolutely anything? This is not like, I've seen some idiot comments recently where they say, "Oh, this is the most divided we've been in the history of our country," and I'm like, did you guys miss the '60s or the 1860s?
No, I totally agree with you on that. But, here's the other thing, and I've noticed this with the local media folks across the country. It's their passive attempt to applaud their liberal national brothers and sisters. Will go, Trump will tweet about being a genius, and then all of a sudden, well, he certainly is humble. Or people retweeting the Tapper thing, and you're thinking, well, not only were you talking about a progressive mindset at the national level, but really at the local level as well.
Well, it's not surprising. And you can't move up in journalism now unless you're going to be a lefty. And that means if you are, if you lean right in journalism, you got to spend a good chunk of your time attacking the right, a la Bret Stephens and David Brooks. Bret Stephens at least makes some noises about being conservative on some things, but he's also, an idiot when it comes to other stuff. I mean, just an outright idiot. He's anti-gun. He's anti-Second Amendment. I refuse to even consider somebody who's anti-Second Amendment to be conservative. And David Brooks, I'm not sure if he said anything pro-conservative in years. I worked with David Brooks.
Okay.
He wasn't an idiot then, but he certainly is one now, because when you're paid by the New York Times to be a pretend conservative, it's a lot of money. And, I mean, look at Morning Joe. Joe Scarborough was a Republican member of Congress. Now he's the most firebrand anti-conservative idiot on television practically. But he gets millions of dollars from MSNBC to be a firebrand anti-conservative idiot. In the Bible is 30 pieces of silver. It's the same thing. It's just a different paycheck.
Dan Gaynor joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Dan, a couple other points. What do you make of the Steve Bannon thing? And look, with all due respect, Dan, you have been around for years. I've been around for years. Bannon's rise, is meteoric. He's been around for a while. But, I mean, it's not like we're talking Dan Gaynor or Pat Buchanan here. And now all of a sudden, Bannon is on the outs. Your thoughts on Bannon as a political force and the rift between the president? Why would he let Michael Wolff into the White House?
Well, I mean, I don't think letting Michael Wolff into the White House was a bad idea. But if you're gonna, I'm not gonna damn people for bad ideas, because then everybody's done. I know I've had bad ideas in my life. The bigger issue is the rift. I don't know if that's healable. I mean, Trump has a long history of, except if people will apologize and try to work with him, he usually will look past previous failings. I mean, look how he tries to work with some of the people who ran against him. But this is a pretty big rift, and I don't see how the two sides come back together. And that certainly is difficult if you're a Trump supporter. Where do you land on that? Where does Bannon land on this? If you believe the media, and I'm not sure I do, there's a big effort to oust Bannon from Breitbart. I don't know if that's true or not. I would think if that was going to happen, it would have already happened.
Well, I agree with you, but then just getting back to this whole thing about Bannon as this political force and possibly running for president and such, and
he's not running for president. I mean, he's not running for president because the entire left hates him, the entire media hates him, and now he's offended Trump supporters. I'm not sure what constituency that would leave you with, but you're not running for president with that.
So now tonight it's the national title game. The president will be there. Apparently ESPN will not be talking to him.
ESPN is staffed by such idiots. I mean, really. It's become an embarrassment. Even though John Skipper, the CEO of ESPN, left under what is purported to be drug issues. I say purported to be because I've seen some people raise questions about that. But whatever it is, he left the network. He still, he put in place this ridiculous left-wing network and filled the network with a bunch of left-wing people who want to push left-wing ideas. That's not going to change. The ESPN is no longer a sports network. It's a political network. And I wouldn't watch it unless basically you paid me, which means sometimes I would do it because of my job. But otherwise, why endure it?
Dan Gaynor, it's good to have you back. Hello to all the West Coast Gaynors living in the Treasure Valley. We certainly appreciate your time every Monday. Thank you, sir.
Well, I love being on, and I'm not sure how cold it is there, but it's been pretty darn cold here. So if it's warmer there, maybe I should go visiting. It was 2 degrees over the weekend. That's just too cold for the Mid-Atlantic.
It's a balmy 37 here right now, sir.
Oh, the major occurrence for me over the weekend was the hot water pipe in my house that froze warmed up enough to unfreeze.
That's progress.
Yes, that's the deep freeze. And I know people in Wisconsin and all are getting it far worse than we are, but they live in Wisconsin. I live south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah, Gator, you have a great one. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye. We appreciate it. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Your calls are next. We'll talk a little bit about the president, the 25th Amendment, and whether or not you believe these allegations from Michael Wolff. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Max. Max, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning. I wanted to just very briefly touch on this marijuana thing that Liberal Steve is just hanging on to for dear life. He sounds like he's an intelligent man. He just sounds like he doesn't read, study, or get vetted on the subject. Now, I'm not saying that all your pot smokers are airheads, but they do seem to have some very common characteristics among them, character flaws. And I would not smoke it. I'm not into that sort of a thing. But on the same vent, I'm really worried about federal overreach. I really am. The state of Idaho can take care of its marijuana, and if those airheaded Californians want to float around in a haze of bong smoke, just keep it on their side of the border. We'll be fine. It's against the law, but I'm torn between this federal and state thing. I really am.
Well, there is no torn. It's federal law that wasn't enforced under President Barack Obama.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, let's assume if Barack Obama had enforced it, yeah, right, never going to happen. But if he'd ever enforced it, if the government enforced it, what you'd have is Washington stomping their huge size 10 boot, bam, right into San Diego, right into Los Angeles.
No, not really. And I'll tell you why. Because
when federal marshals go after your state residents,
you wouldn't have had people legalizing marijuana. It wouldn't have happened.
Now that's
you wouldn't have had
true,
the states.
I am against legalization, and as I mentioned once before to you, I have yet to read a bona fide study showing that medical marijuana really does have these benefits. The marijuana users have been trucking this around the same way the Russian probe has been thrown all over. You know, the Russian conspiracy, in the end, no smoking gun. Marijuana, medical use, right now, to date, no smoking gun. They're trying everything they can to get it legalized. They're comparing it to alcohol. They're doing whatever they want to do because, as you and I know, the major media of the United States are definitely strangers to the truth.
Max, thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio and calling in.
Thank you, sir.
Let's get you to traffic and weather together. And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. You know, we haven't had a chance to digest the Michael Wolff book. We will do that and take your phone calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Last night, though, it was the Golden Globes, and most of us missed it. But let's take a listen.
Good evening, ladies and remaining gentlemen. I'm Seth Meyers, and I'll be your host tonight. Welcome to the 75th Annual Golden Globes. Harvey Weinstein isn't here tonight, but don't worry, he'll be back in 20 years when he becomes the first person ever booed during the In Memoriam.
We no longer live in the blank white spaces at the edge of print. We are the story in print, and we are writing the story ourselves.
Lower the music, guys. One second. It's taken 25 years. Give me a minute.
I want to say thank you to my mom and dad and the people of Sacramento who gave me roots. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And the Golden Globe goes to 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Fighting hard to make sure that they become the leaders who take us to the time when nobody ever has to say, me too, again.
Well, that's a mouthful. Let's go to Simon Owen joining us from London on Fox News Radio, right here at KIDO Talk Radio. Simon, good morning.
Hey, Kevin. Morning.
So North Korea, South Korea in the news, getting ready not only for the Olympics, but perhaps some thawing of relations.
Yeah, maybe a bit of both. They're going to hold their first official talks in more than 2 years. It's night time now on the Korean Peninsula, so we are a few hours away from this starting, but it is something that's being closely watched by people in both North Korea and South Korea, and also governments around the world, particularly the United States, a very close ally of South Korea and the sworn enemy of the North Koreans, as we've seen in the various nuclear threats that the North Korea has issued in the past, months, years and decades, to be honest. These talks have come together fairly swiftly. The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un suggested them about a week ago. South Korea had extended that offer several months before that. But then last week, North Korea picked up the phone, and that may not sound like much, but they have this special hotline that exists for official communications between these two countries. They are technically still at war, dating back to the Korean War. So they rely on this hotline, which North Korea hasn't been answering by all accounts since early 2016. But now they are speaking, and they are going to meet, and these talks will take place Tuesday, so overnight your time, Tuesday Korean time.
Yeah, apparently not only is it antiquated equipment, but fax machines are still relevant there.
Well, they might use faxes still, and even when, ultimately sometimes you're going to have to communicate, even if you're not technically on good terms and talking. And so the South Koreans say that sometimes they resort to using a bullhorn, and they simply walk up to the borderline and shout messages across if there's something that they think they need to get across to North Korea.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it first came about because somebody received a fax. Amazing when we're thinking about this. Now, Simon, I don't know if you've ever been to the DMZ, but I'm so fascinated by it because you have this one room, and as you said, the armistice was declared. Half of it is North Korea, half of it is South Korea. This is no hyperbole. That is a room that has had a lot of history, a lot of negotiations, and still you have people being held by the belt because they're afraid the North Koreans would grab them and kidnap them.
Yeah, and not much action in there in recent years. They actually meet at a special building. I think it's called the Peace Building, which is about 400 yards away from the border itself. The border has these huts on them, and this is where the shouted messages go through, and the faxes and the phone calls, and it is just a line. And half of the hut is on one side, and half of the hut is on the other. This is all in one village. It's a village called Panmunjom, which they know as the Truce Village. The North Korean-South Korean border is heavily fortified. Again, as I say, they're still at war technically. But you have this spot. This is the one spot where soldiers from both sides stand face to face. And then there's this separate building, sort of glass and concrete, set further back. And that's where we're told the talks are going to happen. We don't know how long they'll take. They have gone on for a while in the past. As I say, this isn't unprecedented. And previously they've got this far and then they have the talks and then nothing happens. But this is all about the Winter Olympics officially, and so it may be feasible that they could come up with a breakthrough and get a North Korean delegation of some kind down to the Winter Olympics in South Korea next month.
Any thoughts on the Olympics? I know it's going to be in South Korea. People are getting ready for it here. Obviously, we're a Winter Olympic state. But the old, again, the idea of how this plays into security and everything else.
Well, I mean, I think when this was really tense last summer and when Kim Jong-un and President Trump were trading threats, there perhaps were some concerns at some levels about it. It's also been used as a bit of a political chip, as happens in situations like this. Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, told Fox a couple of months ago or a few weeks ago that, depending on security, she said, we will look at this, whether a U.S. team goes. Now, the U.S. Olympic Committee has been adamant throughout that they are going and there are no concerns. But certainly here in London, if you talk to Olympic officials for the British team, for instance, they say that, we have had some concerns expressed by either athletes or their families, but they have reassured them. And certainly in the U.S. case, I've seen no indication that it's not going to be a full team that is sent there. Olympic organisers will say that it seems that every Olympics these days ends up with some kind of security headache, whether it's Islamist terrorism in London in 2012 or, similar Islamist terrorism in Russia for the Winter Olympics in 2014. There were concerns about personal safety in Rio in 2016, and now the concern about a missile crisis here. But I think the prospect of North Korea, launching a missile at the Olympic Village and that sort of thing is not going to happen. It's extremely unlikely. The main thing they were concerned about, I think, is North Korea firing off another one of its tests, whether that's a nuclear bomb test or a missile test. And even if it goes nowhere near the Olympics, it would be another geopolitical crisis on the peninsula. But the South Koreans seem to be doing all they can to avoid that, and they've struck this quite unusual deal with the United States, where those two countries are going to suspend the almost rolling program of military joint drills that they do, which look pretty dramatic, and they always enrage the North Koreans. And the US and South Korea have said, okay, there'll be no drills for the duration of the Olympics and the Paralympics.
Simon, we appreciate it. You have a great day, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.
Our great friend Simon Owen joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You are listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM and 580 AM. So, Michael Wolff doing the big tour, if you will, going all over the place. He's the author of Fire and Fury. And, of course, as Dan Gaynor said, if you like Donald Trump, you're going to have issues with this book. If you don't like Donald Trump, you're going to love it. But Michael Wolff holding nothing back. Michael Wolff, a writer for Newsweek, kissed up to the Trump administration, got in. Look, it was a bad move to put a writer in. It's a bad move to talk to the press at all. Here is Michael Wolff on Steve Bannon.
I'm sure he probably was. I think that he saw this White House as dysfunctional in large part, because it was being run by the president's family, people who had, no experience, but also on any organizational level, meant that they were the family. They could overrule everything. Calamity.
And here is Michael Wolff advocating, that the cabinet invoke the 25th Amendment to remove the president from office.
This is alarming in every way. And then this went on. Okay, this is a little 25th Amendment. So 25th Amendment is a concept that is alive every day in the White House.
And there we have it, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We're joined now by Liberal Steve with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio.
Buenos dias, Senor Miller. Good morning, Idaho. Yeah, Gaynor was off his rock this morning. And what's with Max? He brought my name up right away. I don't like that when people do that. They can keep. I don't bring his name up right away. And I think he's one of those closet smokers. You know what I mean? He's against cannabis, but he'll burn it whenever he can. Oh, lordy. Wolff has dropped, what do they call that? The mother of all books. Are you going to read it, Kevin?
I don't think so.
I don't think I will either. Yeah, you're right. He was on every media outlet in the last 72 hours, nonstop. Invoke the 25th, invoke the 25th. Yeah, right. Come on.
Well, look, it really comes down to your ilk cannot beat Donald Trump, didn't beat him in the election, didn't beat him with the Russians, the made-up phony Russian allegations, can't beat him with the wall, can't beat him with keeping us safe from the radical Islamists. So this is what they do. By any means necessary, make things up.
Has anybody done the paper trail on Wolff as far as...
Wolff himself said, I used creative license.
No, yeah, he says that, but who fronted the money for him to get in there? Who wanted that information and make it go south like that? Who,
it comes down to the fact, do you support the media that has a problem with this president and wants to get rid of him? That's really what it comes down to. You're either with the president or you're not. Simple.
Well, don't you agree that anyone could write a book about myself or about you and twist things, don't put in full paragraphs or phrases, and make you look like an idiot?
Right.
I think it's easy for anybody. So I think he had some big money backing him. And that's why I say follow the trail. Who was giving him money? How was he staying alive? Where was his income coming in from? Because he wasn't making money sitting there taking notes. Anyway, you stay fired up, Miller, and I'm glad the Koreans are going to sit down and play a game of chess.
Anyway, always insightful. Thank you, Liberal Steve. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. White House Senior Advisor Stephen Miller, no relation, was on State of the Union with Jake Tapper, and things got a little heated.
That this has nothing to do with. So it was just moved from the top to the bottom? No. No, look at the letter. It's the beginning. The investigation is referenced in the beginning of the final letter that was released to point out about the fact that notwithstanding having been informed that there's no investigation, that the move that is happening is completely unrelated to that. So it was a disclaimer that appeared in the final version of the letter that was made public.
I want to ask you, because you obviously are very offended by the notion that this book, Fire and Fury, paints a picture of President Trump. Trump is not mentally up to the job. On Saturday, President Trump put out a series of tweets trying to defend himself on this issue of fitness. And he said, quote, "Actually, throughout my life, my two greatest assets have been mental stability and being really smart. Crooked Hillary Clinton also played these cards very hard and, as everyone knows, went down in flames. I went from very successful businessman to top TV star to President of the United States on my first try. I think that would qualify as not smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that." Do you think tweets like that help or hurt the cause that the president is stable and up for the job?
Not only do I think they help it, but I think in the toxic environment that you've created here in CNN and cable news, which is a real crisis of legitimacy for your network, and we saw it, of course, with the extremely fake news you reported about the Don Jr. and WikiLeaks story. There was a huge embarrassment for your network.
Stephen?
Just like the huge embarrassment you had.
Now, again, Stephen Miller pointing things out. Jake Tapper can dish it out, but he can't take it. We'll give you the rest of this coming up, plus your calls, where we have an example of liberal media censorship. They want people to come on, but they don't want to talk about the real issues. And Miller exploits and exposes Tapper. You don't want to miss how Jake Tapper responds. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Very successful businessman to top TV star to President of the United States on my first try. I think that would qualify as not smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that. Do you think tweets like that help or hurt the cause that the president is stable and up for the job?
Not only do I think they help it, but I think in the toxic environment that you've created here in CNN and cable news, which is a real crisis of legitimacy for your network, and we saw it, of course, with the extremely fake news you reported about the Don Jr. and WikiLeaks story. There was a huge embarrassment for your network.
Stephen?
Just like the huge embarrassment you had when you got the Comey testimony wrong.
Stephen, I'm trying to get to the issue of the president's fitness, which a lot of people are questioning.
I'm getting to the issue of your fitness, but the president's tweets absolutely reaffirmed the plain-spoken truth. A self-made billionaire revolutionized reality TV and tapped into something magical that's happening in the hearts of this country. The people that you don't...
The president has approval rating in the 30s. I don't know what magical you're talking about.
The people that you don't connect with and understand, the people whose manufacturing jobs have left, who've been besieged by high-crime communities, and who've been affected by a policy of uncontrolled immigration, those voices, those experiences don't get covered on this network. That's why, to prove the point, I was booked to talk about the very issues I'm just describing, and you're not even asking about them because they're not interesting facts to you.
That's not true. I have plenty of questions on immigration. You've attempted to filibuster by talking about your flights.
No, I'm not. I
want to ask you a question because
don't be condescending, Jake.
Stephen, the president and the White House.
The reason why
the
reason why I want to talk about the president's experiences, what I've seen with him traveling to meet dozens of foreign leaders, with his incredible work.
Okay, you're not answering the questions.
No,
I understand.
You have 24 hours a day of anti-Trump material. You're not going to give 3 minutes for the American people to hear the real experience of Donald Trump.
There's one viewer that you care about right now, and you're being obsequious. You're being a factotum in order to please him, okay?
No.
And I think I've wasted enough of my viewers' time.
You know who I care
Stephen.
about?
As Republicans, lawmakers call for Attorney General Jeff Sessions to resign in a major...
There we have it. There we have it. Jake Tapper not happy with Stephen Miller. Well, who do you believe? I'd like to hear from you next. KIDO Talk Radio time is 6:55. Traffic and weather. And coming up, we'll talk to Dave Petzo about this from the New York Times. In a clash between California and Trump, it's one America versus another. Amazing. But back to this rift between Stephen Miller, no relation, and Jake the Tapper. Hey, here's the situation with this. Stephen Miller was calling them out, all the things that they've gotten wrong on CNN, all the agenda items that they've tried to get against this president. And yet, Jake Tapper, just like a lot of people, Jake can dish it out, but Jake can't take it. And whether we're seeing something that we've never experienced, not only at the presidency, but in leadership itself. You have somebody that when he is attacked, he fights back. Now, people would like him to be like Mitt Romney or George Bush, maybe even John McCain, and not fight back. Why is it only one political party can fight back, and that's the Democrats? Now, some people will say, some people here in the Treasure Valley, in the state of Idaho, look, I love his policies, but I do not love his behavior. Well, how do you accept friends? How do we accept friends? You accept their good qualities and the bad, just not the good. It's the bad as well. And we see that with the president. He's taken everybody to task that is going after him. Was it a mistake to let the writer into the White House? Yes. But it's preposterous that you have this guy who wrote for Newsweek and apparently is a New York writer advocating the 25th Amendment. It is crazy. And yes, when your political knowledge, when your political livelihood is based on the president keeping his job. Now, imagine if Donald Trump had failed at anything while he has been elected president. Yes, healthcare didn't go that way, but was it Donald Trump that said for 8 years that we're going to replace and repeal Obamacare? Was it Donald Trump that said that? Was it Donald Trump that said he had a plan? It was the folks in Congress. And then you have, again, I've never seen, whether it's Kellyanne Conway, whether it's Sarah Sanders, whether it is Stephen Miller, just calling people out and telling it like it is. Let's talk about the manufacturing jobs. Let's discuss the stock market going through the roof. But instead, we're going to curtail the president. You ever have some fun, want to have some fun, and I believe it's online every day, watch that White House press briefing with Sarah Sanders and how people are saying, well, the president should take a test to test his mental competency because we don't know whether or not he has all his, all his marbles, for lack of a better term. Could anybody say that about Barack Obama? About George Bush? About Bill Clinton? I mean, we could look at Bill Clinton and what he did in the Oval Office and say, really, did he have all his marbles? Crazy. Coming up next, Dave Petzel, but first, Fox News with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.